In those days, they were simple.
But anything you could get in the air, you could enter in a race.
You could look at them and get some idea of how they were going to fly.
You wouldn't win, maybe, but you'd at least enter. You learned a lot from that.
This was something new.
Those people were pioneers.
A lot of them put their lives on the line, and they were all good pilots and all competing against one another.
Airplanes are dumb. They are the personification of perversity. They will always do that which you do not want them to do. They are never your friend, and that was the reason that we do a lot of this. We want to triumph over that beast that is out there to kill us.
I think flying's a challenge to be able to do it and to do it well.
Speed's always been a challenge.
Racing is inherent in the nature of man.
It's fun to win.
We're competitive beasts.
A hell of a lot better than second. Well, those were the days when aviation was proving itself.
Well, it was a long race, long, tedious race where the pilot and the whole schmear had to be in top order, and the pilot had to know how to get there and not get lost. And those that didn't know how to do it didn't make it. And it was a test of both man and machine, pure and simple.
A Bendix racer did something that nobody else was doing, nobody else had ever done, and that was getting from point A to point B in less time than man had ever moved in doing it. And that was adventuresome.
Well, it was thrilling. It was exciting. I mean, it was like Barnum and Bailey 100 times over.
People came from all over, and there was something like 250,000 people.
Did you ever see pictures of the stands at Cleveland?
Unbelievable.
They were huge.
People were everywhere, in trees.
That place was jammed.
Little communities would set up their own little grandstands and have a picnic.
I had never in my life seen that many automobiles in one place, and they were all meticulously parked because Cliff Henderson was one hell of an organizer.
My husband, Cliff Henderson, really thought of the Bendix as his baby.
Cliff understood why those people came to the races.
There wasn't much else in the Depression to look at but airplanes, really. It was Lindbergh and Doolittle and anybody that flew those fast airplanes. Those are the heroes.
They were absolute heroes. They were American public heroes.
They were American heroes. They came from every part and sector of America, from the cities and from the towns, from the honored halls of academia and from the dirt floor garages deep in the heartlands. They represented the hopes, dreams, and adventures of millions of earthbound, depression-ridden Americans. They were explorers, discovering a new frontier high above the mundane problems of a troubled era. In the memories we have of the 1930s, the image of the Bendix racer is that of a shining star, pointing future generations toward greatness.
This is Jimmy Doolittle. I flew in the Bendix race. I'm not sure it was the first one, but whichever one it was, I won it.
The greatest, the only one.
I think he's the best.
Jimmy was one of those extreme drive type human beings of go, 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 push, 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 the ultimate, always the ultimate, never settle for second. There is no such thing as second to a man like Jimmy Doolittle.
I am a single-minded individual. I have the capability to think clearly, concisely, constructively about one thing at a time and one thing only, and that thing is surviving. And so you do those things that are necessary to survive, and you do them instinctively, and you do them promptly.
Ah, there's my hero. That's Jim as he landed after winning the Bendix at Cleveland. Everybody thinks it was Errol Flynn.
I always thought of Jimmy Hazelip as being the perfect gentleman. He always looked so dashing.
Oh, I nearly swooned.
And he was a very fine pilot.
We're in the money, we're in the money.
And that's Roscoe, bless his heart, Turner.
He was the personification of showmanship in his blue uniforms and his wings that he designed himself and his 50 Mission Crush hat, his carefully waxed mustache, his lion cub, Gilmore, that flew with him.
And he come out in his uniform, and You know, I says, boy, that's the way to go. This has got to be the epitome of flying.
Rosser said, I don't like to wear this fancy uniform, but this is part of my thing, and it does a lot for aviation, and it did. It put class in it. Everybody loved him.
I'm Glenda Mae Davis. I was married to Doug Davis, the pilot, who won the Bendix Trophy in 1934. Doug was preaching, if anyone ever did, that flying was another safe means of transportation. He dressed like you would going to the office. A business suit, shirt, and tie. I never saw him without that tie.
Of course, when Doug Davis was killed, why, we felt very bad about that because we liked him a great deal. He was a splendid pilot and a real wonderful person.
I really think it's to my credit that I never once asked him not to fly. But I did get off back of the hangar and pray about it.
Anyone that says they're not afraid to fly, there's something wrong with them. Most of them are dead or they're going to be dead because you always got to have that fear there to keep you honest and to make you do what you know you ought to do. I've known a lot of fearless flyers, and a lot of them aren't around today.
If the wings came off, as they did occasionally, there's no time to be frightened. There's no time to be thrilled. There's no time to do anything except the things that you have to do damn fast to survive.
Benny Howard, the man who designed Pete, Ike, Mike, and Mr. Mulligan, of course, that won the 1935 Bendix race. Benny had this tremendous desire and these ideas in his head about an airplane and could put those thoughts and concepts down on paper, and then they would build an airplane from them. That airplane is the physical embodiment of that man's desire to do the ultimate.
My mother was very fortunate to have been a Bendix winner in 1936, and probably even more fortunate that she happened to be in it the first time that women and men were competing at the same time, and she wound up not only getting the consolation prize that Mr. Bendix had offered for any poor woman who could even finish the race, but she got the top prize too. My mother felt, I think, back in the 20s and the 30s, as did most of the rest of the women pilots, that they were going to have an uphill fight to be able to participate in the aviation world at that time, because it was definitely a man's world. It took many a year for them to finally convince the powers that be that to at least let them compete.
There were some very good women pilots. As a matter of fact, I think almost all of the women pilots were good.
I'm Frank W. Fuller, Jr., and I'm proud to say that I was fortunate enough to win the 1937 and 1939 Bendix transcontinental races. In 1938, I suffered the humiliation of being beaten by a woman, quite a famous woman, however, Jacqueline Cochran.
She out-navigated Frank Fuller, a point which he still is sore about today.
This is not in the way of an alibi, but the weather was very bad that year.
Jackie Cochran, certainly. She was quite a woman, I'll tell you. She was probably the #1 woman pilot in this United States. Now, she was a wealthy woman, and therefore she had the leg up on a heck of a lot of the other gals. Well, that's no crime. But she had a lot of intestinal fortitude.
I suppose the thing that we all had was a love of flying and a desire to excel.
It was something that I thought was very, very beautiful. Their delight in being together, you know, and talking about the things that they were most interested in. It was something unusual, I thought, very fine, very special.
It was a very close-knit group. Actually, between the men and the women both, they all really knew each other.
And then they'd get together and they'd talk at the same time. I don't know who was saying what, but they seemed to know.
And then in a short time, by no choice of anybody's, they were at war.
I sat there warming the engine, and a phrase came back to me from a book that I had just read. Let's see if I can recall it. From whence I started, how have I ever come to this? I tell you the way I feel. If you live in the past and you dread the future, you've destroyed the present. This is all we have right now.